Good afternoon, welcome, great to be back. 15 minutes and counting. So Steampipe, it's a tool. It's not used for development. Maybe you can use it during development, but probably even more for operational tasks and for preparing for development. And it's definitely not something that will be part of the application that you deploy. So it's a tool that will help you. My name is Jellema, I'm CTO of Conclusion. Conclusion is an ecosystem of 30 companies. We do many different things. One of the companies you may know is First Aid. They organize the Masters of Java event every year. Enough about that. So the situation is that you have a cloud, and in your cloud you've got many resources, and you want to know more about those resources. You want to know what their status is, or what their parameters are, if they're running, if they are failing, in which subscription or tenancy, or where they are. And how do you get information about your cloud resources? Well, typically you can use an API and craft your REST calls and decipher the responses. There might be a CLI, there might be an SDK, so you can do your own programming, or there's the web portal and you can look it up. Of course, there's also always the challenges of defining the connections, how to even get there, what are the commands, what's the specific syntax that you need to use, what's the format in which you ask your question and in which you get your answer, and is it possible to make it part of an automated process? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. There could be a lot of effort involved, and if you have figured it out for one cloud, for one environment, then there might be a different cloud and you have to start all over again because there's a different set of APIs or a different command line interface, different UI. It's all different. And it might not just be clouds, a few clouds. It could be many other platforms as well from which you would like to get metadata on your resources. Which resources do we have? What's their status? How are they doing? And having to do this all through the REST APIs means a lot of work, a lot of effort, not much fun, not much productivity at all. So that's where Steampipe comes in. And their main assumption is, what's the most common way in our world of retrieving and analyzing data? Obviously, that's SQL. So what if all the retrieval of information about our resources in clouds and elsewhere, if you could do it using SQL? Well, that's exactly what Steampipe offers. So all this fetching of information and then analyzing of information is done through SQL. It's like select star from cloud, except that it's much more than just a cloud. And it's also just more than select star, because that's really a stupid bare bones SQL statement. So here's a demo of some of the things that using the command line interface of Steampipe you can do. So you can inspect the connections you have available, you can inspect the resources or the tables that you have at your disposal, and you can select information from these resources. Of course, at some point, when you have requested the information in SQL style, at some point an API call is still being made. But you don't have to make it, Steampipe makes it for you. So you have configured your connection, then you ask your question in SQL, you get your answer in a relational way, or in JSON or CSV, and Steampipe is taking care of all the details of the specific interaction with the cloud or the other platforms. Now, I'm not going to show a lot of this, just to give you a general impression. So with SQL, of course, we can not just fetch information, that's the select part, we can also format and convert by using functions in our select clause. We can filter using where, we can sort using order by, we can do aggregations with a group by. It's just plain SQL what you get. And you can perform it on the information retrieved from either your clouds or your other platforms, and the ones that you saw on the slides. SQL also allows us to do joins. So can Steampipe also allow us to do joins? Well, actually it can. So all the joins that you know from regular SQL are available now with the information that you retrieve about your cloud resources, and about what's running in Kubernetes, and about what's on your file system and in your CSV files. So you can join across resources in the same cloud environment, across connections to the same environment, and even across clouds and platforms, across different environments. So a SQL query that uses information from these various platforms is perfectly possible. And then you can also, in your Steampipe queries, you can also join with regular tables and views. And this might give you a little bit of a hint of what might be under the hood in Steampipe. And more about that in a little while. So using Steampipe, you can do it, well, you first have to install it. And there's an installer for Linux, for Mac, for Windows, and for Windows it will use the Windows subsystem for Linux under the hood. There's also a container image available. And then you need to add plugins. So for each platform, for each cloud, for each environment that you want to interact with, each type of environment, you install a plugin. All in all, there are 137 different plugins. And that's for a tool that started live in 2021. So it is really a vibrant community. You can run your queries through the command line interface. You can run them in batch mode, so in an automated fashion, and also through a regular database connection. Now that's interesting, a regular database connection. More about that in a moment. You can get your output in text format, in CSV, and in JSON format. So the plugins, here's an example of the documentation on the GitHub plugin. It tells you how to install it. It gives you an overview of what information it provides. In this case, 55 tables of information about resources somehow part of the GitHub platform. And for each individual table or each individual resource, it gives you an overview of the type of queries that you can perform, and also a list of all the attributes or all the columns that are available when you perform a query against this table. So now a closer look what's actually under the hood. So if either through a regular database connection or through the CLI you perform a query against Steampipe, what you're actually querying against is a Postgres database. It's embedded in Steampipe, and Steampipe leverages the foreign function interface of PostgreSQL, which allows you to take a SQL query that tries to access data from a table or something that looks like a table, but isn't actually a table. So instead of trying to retrieve data from a local table in the PostgreSQL database, PostgreSQL will make a call out to this foreign function. In this case, a Go framework that Steampipe has added to this embedded PostgreSQL database. And then the call is forwarded to the specific plugin, also written in Go. And in this example slide, there's a Twitter plugin, X plugin, and other plugins for the specific environments. This is where you could add your own plugin as well. So if you go into Golang, implement the API, implement one function for retrieving the details for a single resource, one function to retrieve information for a list of resources based on query parameters, you can add your own plugin. Now, I haven't created my own plugin, but I have been adding resources to existing plugins because they didn't support all the resources that I wanted to be supported, and that's not very hard to do at all. So Steampipe can be accessed as a regular PostgreSQL database. When you work against it, when you work against the PostgreSQL database, you don't really know that some of the data that you're retrieving isn't actually in that database, but is actually fetched at query time from remote resources, such as AWS or Azure. In your local database, you will find every plugin as a schema in the database and every resource as a view in your database. You can also have your own regular schemas with your own regular tables in that database. Steampipe out of the box supports caching, which means that the default setting is 15 minutes. If you have retrieved data about your cloud resources or any other resources, for 15 minutes the data stays cached in your PostgreSQL database, meaning that subsequent queries that further filter that information will be, of course, much faster. Because it's all in your PostgreSQL database, it's very easy to create snapshots of the current situation with your resources wherever they are, and then later on comparing the current situation with the situation that you saved to the database beforehand, and in that way also do a trend analysis. Because Steampipe can be accessed like a regular database using a JDBC connection or any other type of relational database connection, any tool that can talk to relational databases can talk to Steampipe. So creating your own dashboards that provide information about your cloud resources or the resources on one of the other supported platforms becomes really very easy, either by creating a custom web application or any other type of application, or by using standard BI tools. They can do SQL, Steampipe embedded with PostgreSQL also does SQL, so the combination really works very well. And creating a dashboard with an overview of all your VMs on AWS and Azure, combining them, comparing them, is really simple, because it's just working against a database that seems to contain the live information about all your cloud resources. Coming to my conclusion. Steampipe, as its tagline says, select star from cloud. That's where they started back in 2021. I think it's a little bit, well, the wrong tagline, because it's actually much more than just select star. It's the full power of SQL. This SQL query, by the way, is meaningless. It's just to give you the impression that you can do a lot with this SQL in Steampipe, which is true. This query is not. And it's not just cloud, so it's much more than select star. It's also much more than from cloud, because it's from all of these tools, all of these environments. And because that's what it offers, it allows you to create your own great reports, dashboards, quality checks, etc., on top of all the live resource data for all your cloud resources and resources in other platforms. So I really can recommend using Steampipe. Have fun. Thank you.